sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. When death has come and taken our loved ones, it leaves our home so lonely and drear. Then do we wonder why others prosper, living so wicked year after year. Farther along we'll know all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. When we see Jesus coming in glory, when he comes from his home in the sky, then we shall meet him in that bright mansion. We'll understand it all by and by. Farther along we'll know all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. Tempted and tried, we're oft made to wonder why it should be thus all the day long, while there are others living about us, never molested, going the wrong. Farther along we'll know all about.
All right. Well, looking forward to a new study, and I've been here 2 years, and it's time to teach on the Proverbs. Taught on the Psalms a little bit, and it's time to get the Proverbs in. It's just those are fundamental books and lessons that we need to be studying from time to time, and so that's what I plan to do. We're not looking at necessarily verse by verse or anything like that. We will be looking at a little bit more of the first few chapters, and then chapter 4 we'll start getting into themes, okay? But the first few chapters kind of set the stage, and then we'll kind of slowly wharf off into different themes. But why study the book of Proverbs? Why spend time here? Yeah, Dolores? The book of wisdom. We all need that godly wisdom. What else? Why study this book? That's a great, kind of hard to beat that.
It's wisdom for everyday life.
Wisdom for everyday life. Yeah. We're not talking about the theoretical, and we'll see that immediately. He's going to get real practical in the chapter 1 about who we associate with. There's not these lofty theoretical ideas that it gets right down on the street level of where we live and the problems we face. And that's great. Any other thoughts on Proverbs and why it's important and things that you think about as yeah, sure, certainly, absolutely. Yeah, kind of tying more into that. It really getting on that street level gospel version of the gospel shows you the consequences of both positive and negative of living a godly life, and we need that. We need to see the positive, and then we also need to know when we go down paths that are not godly, what it'll. Every road, my experience is every road takes you somewhere. Now, I've been down some roads, and I won't lie, I've been down some roads here in Manford that took me to a dead end in a river or a bunch of trees. And that road took me somewhere, didn't it? Just not where I wanted to go. Every road, every path, what? Will take you somewhere. That's a true statement. And Proverbs shows us that. And Jesus, do you think Jesus was familiar with the Proverbs? These simple, concise, clear, kind of wordy word pictures, right? That straight is the what? Way. Right. Right. You just think about Jesus, the images. A wise man would be like a wise man who builds his house right on that rock, and the foolish man on the sand and the rain and the wind. And I mean, how often do we see Jesus tying into parabolical statements and ideas and being familiar with, no doubt, the Proverbs? We're not going to spend introduction time. I've kind of been in a phase lately on some of that. I've done that lately on the last few years. I think I did it on the Psalms. We're going to do it similar like the Psalms. I'm not doing a bunch of introduction. Who wrote it and this, that, and the other, and a whole class on that. It's a collection of wisdom, primarily Solomon to his son. And so it has that context, but it's... and it's a difficult book at times to read because you start getting into it and it just one verse is this and one verse is this and one verse is that, and so you have to study it by themes and the ideas that are presented. Let me ask you this: what's your favorite? Not Proverbs from the book, but we have modern Proverbs, don't we? What, do you have any favorite Proverbs or sayings from Dad or Grandpa or Mom or? What's Proverbs that have you heard that kind of have stuck out in your mind? Has somebody ever said a phrase or a figure of speech or a... Well, yeah, I brought you in this world, I take you out. Yeah, that's a good one. Anybody have any good memories of kind of a proverb type statement? Yeah, Dolores? Don't cry over spilt milk. Yeah, that's a proverb. That's a statement. Yeah, go ahead, Mom. Yeah, walk on your feet when they're little. They'll walk on your heart. Yeah, Jeff? Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Yeah, yeah. Leon? Yeah, that's a good, those general truism statements that we remember that. Yeah, Ron? Hit it hard like you what? Like you live. Better hit it easy, yeah. Any others that you think about? Now they got 2 or 3, 4 going. Yeah, Larry? Yeah, bird in hand, worth 2 in the bush. But boy, we thinking we can get more right in that bush. Yeah, Ron? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That kind of stuff stays with us, doesn't it? You know, those kind of statements. I mean, they're memorable. Um, they paint a word picture for us. They really are lasting. You know, and people can remember that, and that's why Jesus would often make statements and speak in language like that people could relate to and understand, and have that the wisdom of the Proverbs that he would speak into. Here's one that I like, and it's kind of a good for our beginning of our class, from a 20th century American poet, Carly Baker. She said, today I have grown taller from walking with the trees. And I like that. And I think that's a good modern proverb that describes what we're going to see in the book of Proverbs. We get to walk through wisdom, right? And as we do that, we're going to get what? Wiser. Now, the flip side of that, and we're going to get into that even tonight, who we walk around with can what? Can completely influence us. Yeah. I mean, it is who we surround ourselves matters, right? They can help us grow taller, or they can what? Shrink us morally, ethically, spiritually. And I think that's what we see here. And so I kind of want to use that, and again, these proverbs and these images that help us understand. Okay, so let's turn over to Proverbs, and let's read verses 1 through 7. Again, I'm not going to take verse by verse and break it down. Now, if there's something that you really, that I think I should cover, or you have a question about, speak up, and we'll do it. But we're not going to, my intention isn't to talk about every verse per se, but look for the theme, look for the larger ideas that we find here. But if there's something you think is interesting or we're not covering or mentioning, raise your hand and read it and restate it, and we'll observe it. So that's kind of how we'll go. So you got to do that if you're thinking, well, Robert's going to... and I do want to say this. Remember this about the Proverbs. Wisdom literature, these are general truths. They are, you're dealing with probability. Probability. That if you do this, this is what usually, generally, mostly, the probability is high that this happens. Train up a child in the way he should go. And when he's older, he'll what? Proverbs 22, 6. And yet we've pounded ourselves at times in the church with that verse, with guilt when our child or grandchild departs from the truth or from the faith or how they were trained. Some of you, I imagine, have children and grandchildren that you're thinking of now when I say that. Well, these are not absolute statements without exception. First of all, with children, of course, the probability is generally true that when we train, when we teach, when we model, when we have a loving, godly home with our children, the probability, the likelihood is that they are going to be faithful. They'll at least come back to it if they depart. But that's a general statement. It is not an absolute certainty, because we're going to see here as we talk about it, you have the element of free choice, right? Each of us have to decide ultimately to follow God and to follow our godly parents. And so don't overemphasize some of the Proverbs as though that there's no exceptions. They are general statements, general truths. That's how the wisdom literature works. And so you don't want to, abuse that. And so that was kind of the introduction stuff. But again, I don't want to have a whole class of that kind of stuff. I could bore you with that and different stuff. But that one's always an important one. All right, Proverbs 1 through 7. Who'd like to read that for us? We'll let somebody read. Good read. Okay, Marcia. Okay, the first 7 verses here, this is what's called the prologue, the beginning. It establishes what the book's going to be about. And what he's saying here right out of the gate is you need to, as Solomon is saying these words to his son, he is speaking here and he's saying he's challenging him, commit yourself to this way, to mastering these words, this book, so we would say. You commit yourself to it, because if you do, you're going to excel in life. Now think about that. Can you think of another book in the Bible that covers the range of topics that from A to Z of life like the book of Proverbs? Okay, James, a light version, yes. Ecclesiastes, yes. But I'm going to tell you, you just add up the topics and the range of topics that are covered, from our relationship to God to what are things Proverbs talks about. Let me give you some general categories that you know of. Okay, children and parenting. What else? Work. What else? Scales. Okay. What else? The what? The wise woman. Okay. What else? Honesty. Responsibility. What else? Work is a big one. We use a lot of them every day that come out of our mouths. There we go. Yeah, you guys are with me. Our words. Proverbs has some things to say about our words. What else? Come on. Work, okay. Do we ever have any conflict? Do we ever, what? Your enemies. Do we ever have enemies? Who you associate with. I mean, can you think of another book? It is that, do what? Quarrelsome wives. Okay, now we're moving on. I mean, if you learn the principles and apply the godly teaching and instruction in this book, you will excel in life. That's what he's saying. That is what this book is all about. It is a how-to guide, but it's not just a how-to guide apart from God. And we'll talk about that, because it's rooted, the foundation is, verse 7 is what? The fear of the Lord. And there are some people who've kind of thought that, well, you don't have to have a relationship with God, and you can still follow the principles of Proverbs, but you're not going to be as successful. But this book is it just covers everything, and so that's what he starts off here by teaching him, and instructing him to receive that wisdom, so that he can live right, do right. And of course, he's going to talk about the opposite of that, which is the fool. And we'll talk about the fool, obviously through this class. But what does the fool not want? He doesn't want to live according to God's instruction and God's wisdom and God's knowledge. And he wants to live how he wants to live. And that is the idea of the fool in the Bible. The fool in the Bible is a moral fool. It is not someone who's just, I don't know any better. It's someone who chooses to not obey, to not follow, to not listen, to despise. That's that idea. When you despise something, what are you doing? You hate it. You what? You view it as what? You loathe it. You rebel against it. You scorn it. You laugh at it. This is what so it's an active choice that the fool makes, to say, I don't want to live this way, and I want to live the way I want to, and yet he says here, obviously, wisdom is the key to this book. For gaining wisdom and instruction. What do you think about definitions of wisdom? There's a bunch of them out there. I was looking at some commentaries. Boy, they had a bunch of them. I could throw some up here that were pretty good. I mean, what do you think about when you think about wisdom? Okay.
And that's really important.
Yeah.
People have been there, done that for
What else think about wisdom? Yeah, Ron? Okay, what's been tried and proven? Yeah. Good judgment. Dolores, did you? Okay, common sense, what seems to be not so common, right? Anymore, but what else think here? Think about wisdom. Do what? With God? I ran across this one that I really liked. And I think again, I want to keep it practical in this class, so we're not going to be too theoretical. But listen to what this one, having the expertise to negotiate the complexities of life, that is wisdom. And I can't think of anything more needed in my life right now and in our world than to learn, and I like the word expertise. When you think about an expert, what is someone doing when you think about an expert? What does that mean? What does that imply? What is that? Okay, experience. What else have they done? If they're an expert. Okay, they've what? Yeah, through experience, through knowledge. They've mastered. Yeah, they've mastered. You ever seen an expert welder? You ever seen an expert carpenter? Have you ever seen an expert? What have they learned? They've learned how to what? Take two pieces of metal and what? Weld, and not be like, you know, tricks of the trade. Yeah. And I like that idea that it implies over time, right? You don't gain it what? Instantly. Now that's the problem, right? Because we get in trouble and we pray, because James tells us, right? If anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God. So God, give me wisdom. I want it right now, right? Is that really how, when you see Scripture, yeah, we have moments where God gives, but wisdom is acquired over what? Does God do anything fast when you really look at Genesis to Revelation? What's God's MO actually? What's his track record more often than not? 400 years. Moses, you're going to go off in the desert for 40 years and be a shepherd with your father-in-law. What was Moses gaining though? Wisdom. Working with sheep and working with animals and learning to take orders and learning to negotiate and trades and other tribes and other nations and nationalities, and all that for 40 years prepared him for when God was. You see what I'm saying? And so this idea of learning the expertise to negotiate, to navigate, maybe another word, the complexities of life. Yeah. And does it seem like the complexities of the problems of life just keep, every time I think, well, I don't know if it can get more complicated now, boom, something happens, the complexity seems like is just growing. And I don't know about you at times, I just feel so, I mentioned this in my sermon. I think it was Sunday. I don't know. They run together. Sometimes I'll quote something. You say, you preached that 3 weeks ago. You said last week. Well, you know what I mean. But I ran a list of stuff. You remember? If it was Sunday, I really don't have the slightest idea how to solve a lot of our problems. I really don't. If you really set me down and put truth serum in them and say, "This is what should we do, Robert?" Exactly. I don't have all the complexities of life, and so I need wisdom from God to navigate, to negotiate, to get through that, and because life is like a puzzle. You just dump it all on the dining room table, and again, maybe it's been that way in your life where everything's come easy and you just know what to do and how to do it and what to do and when to do it. But for a lot of us, what is it? when you start on a puzzle, kind of. Sorting it, time consuming, you work on an angle, and you think you got it, and then it's, wait a minute, that's actually a leg. That's a foot over here from a... Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a rhyme and reason for putting a puzzle together, right? I mean, if you just kind of just start throwing it together, right? It's just not going to work. Make it fit. Okay, Marcia, that's what I've done often when I make it fit. And it kind of, the foot's going this way, but it's close enough, right? And that's our challenge. Being able to recognize the path, the course of action, what we need to do. The wisdom is the ability to take these pieces of the puzzle and put them together. And that's going to take a lifetime of growth and the Lord and the Spirit of God working in us and the Scriptures of... you see, here's the reality, and I didn't think like this, but as older I've gotten, I do. God has built into the creation order and design and truth. But here's the tricky thing. He doesn't just put it on neon signs on the highway, just brightly shining, here it is, here it is, here it is. What do we often have to do? Figure it out. We have to what? What does Jesus talk a lot about? Seek, right? Search, right? What do we have to go looking for? The truth. Is it always just going to hit us over the head, a big giant neon sign glowing right there in front of us, billboard? Sometimes, yes. But my experience in life is I've got to put the pieces together. I've got to search for that, whatever I'm putting, if you're doing a puzzle, whatever that car or tree or whatever, a building or whatever it is, you've got to search. It's there, though. All the pieces are there, right? I mean, you could get a box that's this one piece, and that's probably the one, Marcia, that you were having to force. That was the one that was missing. God's got it all there for us that we need to live. But He's not going to what? Just hand it to us? Spoon, you know, we have to seek. Remember what Paul says in Acts 17? He says, you know, that you're seeking, but you're doing it in the wrong way. I mean, God was there. And so the truths of God, the things that God has built into this life to make life successful are there. And some of those are more obvious than others in terms of success, but you just run the gauntlet of business and money and parenting and marriage and children, how we interact socially, all these things. God has built in principles in life that will make us successful if we follow them, if we seek them, if we learn them, if we develop that. Now, how do you develop a heart that seeks wisdom? Isn't that really the tricky part, the hard? How do you develop a heart that seeks wisdom? That if God just doesn't, you exercise it, okay? What? Pray for it. Yeah, you start with asking God to help me. You stay in the Word. What else? Yeah, Linda? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Looking at the example of others who've lived that successfully. Anything else you think about? Willing to learn. I mean, the humility, right, that it takes to say, I don't know. I need to grow. I don't understand. Absolutely. Anything else come to mind? Yeah? Just, yeah. You got to want that. And it is, if someone doesn't want wisdom, you can't, I mean, you can't. Did you have any children or grandchildren that you've thought, I'm trying to what? How many times have you wanted to pull your hair out? You've got them outside, you've got them in the kitchen, the garage, and you're trying to what? Will you what? Listen to me. We've got 2 in college, 1 in high school. Believe me, we're in that phase of, we had a text message going on the other night, didn't we, Maggie, with one of our children? And I'm not going to tell you what it was, but we could, no, I don't want to. But did you notice both of us were kind of, we never really talked about it. This is the first time, we didn't really talk since what she was asking. But I kind of said something like, I don't know. And then Maggie responded, and then you just got up and went to bed after that. We were tired. But we hadn't really talked about it. And then she followed back with a follow-up text, I think, the next day. And I thought we kind of was trying to nudge her down a certain way. She was going to think about it. Yeah, I don't know if she's made her decision yet. Yeah, you're right. But you know, when you're 21, 19, 16, 17, I mean, you've been there, right, with your kids, the grandkids? Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. You can't make someone have wisdom or want wisdom. Yeah, Jeff? Right. Yeah. Well, and that's part of this probably as our kids and they have to, they're becoming, I mean, it's trial and error. They've got to go through that. I think I know, and I think this is the way, and then, I'm learning it's not the way. I mean, it is an acquired thing. And so, okay, so he says here, the fear of the Lord. Let's skip down there to the fear of the Lord. When you think about the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And then again, fools despise that. What do you think about when you think about fear of the Lord and what that translates? What's that look like? What the Bible talks about and playing out? Yeah. Okay, respect. We think about respect for the Lord. What does that look like practically? And reverence, okay? Knowing the value, but put some teeth on that. I'm going to keep hammering. Get it on the street level. I want this class to be street level. What does that mean? When you fear God on the street, what's that look like? You're following His rules. When you go into the work at the office, you're what? You're fearing God. The comments that was made. You live it. You demonstrate it, right? Look at Deuteronomy. Someone read Deuteronomy 10. Let's all. Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 and 13. Who's got that for me? I'd like to read that. Deuteronomy 10, 12 and 13. Who's got that for me? Emma. Okay, Dolores. Okay, so you want to fear the Lord. He starts with that preface. What's that look like? He says. It is what? Fearing the Lord is what? To walk in His ways. To serve Him, to obey Him, to do what He says. I mean, that's ultimately how you what? Show you have honor and respect and fear is to obey, is to do. And that's what is the foundation. I mean, you see this throughout, again, the fear of the Lord here in Proverbs 1, Proverbs 2 and verse 5, I mean, Proverbs 9, verse 10. You just go throughout this section. It just frames and holds everything in place. It's kind of the bracket, so to speak, that is to fear the Lord, is to fear the Lord, fear the Lord. And what that means is to put into practice. And this is the starting point for education, so to speak, in life and success in life. Yeah. And I would say it this way. It is a life commitment to God. If we could kind of summarize a little bit, It's a total commitment and dedication to what the Lord says. And that's what Jesus echoes into that when he says, what? On the end of the Sermon on the Mount. The wise man is the one who hears my words and does them, puts them into practice. That's the wise man. The foolish man hears and he does not put them into practice. We have, church, Christianity, we don't have a head problem, I don't believe. I think we know the scriptures overall. I know we're not where we need to be in churches, but my years in ministry have taught me we don't have a head knowledge problem per se in our churches. We've got a heart and a will problem. Do we want to do? I mean, what are coaches doing right now? They're teaching, but they're also the heart. And I'll tell you, a good coach will take a player every time who's making mistakes, but what's he doing? He's trying hard. Yes. And that is often what we are lacking in living our Christian life, is that heart desire and determination that I'm going to do the will of God today. And it can't just be worship and singing and praying and we come and take the Lord's Supper and we study the Bible tonight in Bible class. It has to translate that I want to put it into practice. Incidentally, before I forget, I'm going to put out a couple of these kind of just devotional. Each chapter I've kind of taken a summary and given you a little, if you want a little devotional for each week. We're not going to cover 31 chapters for 31 weeks, but I am going to put out at least 2 a week because, front and back gives you 2 weeks worth. If you want to. But anyway, that kind of gives the theme, the key verse, and a challenge that you can kind of have if you want to do with. But that's what we need is in this regard. And so he says, this is the fear of the Lord. It's a total commitment to God. Now, let's pick up in verse 8 through 13. We need to keep going because we're almost out of time. 8 through 13, who's got that for us? Okay, Kathy.
My son, hear the instruction of your father, and do not forsake the law of your mother, for they will be graceful ornaments on your head and chains about your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait to shed blood. Let us lurk secretly for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them down alive like Shelah, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all kinds of precious possessions, for we will fill our houses with spoil.
Okay, here he's going to give the first, and again, this is where the street level, on the ground gospel comes into play. Because if we just keep the gospel in this lofty theoretical, Christ died for us, isn't that wonderful? And we just kind of sing about it and pray about it and talk about it, but we don't live the gospel, right? Live out the gospel, the truth of God. And he says, and that's what I love, how the book of Proverbs and the gospel even is grounded in real life, real problems. He doesn't start with 3 chapters in theoretical. He gets right into it in this section in verse 8. And his first thing is stay away from what? Evil people. You want to have wisdom? You want to get it down on the street level? What's that look like in living a wise life? Give me wisdom, preacher. I want to have more wisdom, God. What's that look like? Stay away from what? Bad people. Now, we heard that our whole what? Did you have a good mom that preached on that? You bet you did. Choose your what? Carefully. Friends. Why? They will influence you. Yeah, Kathy?
Well, I read this the other day. Bringing down the walls of Jericho involved more walking than shouting. A Sunday shout is great, but it can't replace a daily walk.
Yeah, every day, every day. Notice, we don't have time, but verses 11 through 14, did you notice the we, us? Look at that again, quickly. If they say, come along with us, let's swallow, if we will get all sorts of valuable, fill our houses with plunder, cast lots with us, we, We, us. What's that emphasizing? Companionship, fun, adventure, free money, free stuff. I mean, that's what they're talking about, robbing people and all of that goes on with, what we would call, crime and committing evil acts. I mean, why do people join those kind of groups? And I mean, we know as we're living godly, wisdom, wise lives, we know what that's going to lead to, and we'll talk about that. But it's enticing, isn't it? What's another word we call that, especially for young people? They face what? Peer pressure. Come on and join. Don't be, your parent. I mean, again, we were all there. We thought our parents, most of us probably, if we're honest, we thought our parents were square. I was going to say something not so not smart, idiots. They know nothing, right? Did you ever think that your parents, they don't know anything, right? We all did that. Yes, she is. And I found out better. You found out better because now let's not point at me. You thought the same thing, a lot of you did. Because some of you, I know there was some rebellion in here, I imagine. Right. But it's just so much fun to do the bad, right? And it's just, and so it's enticing. It is, he entices. And I want to tell you here, the Proverbs is really direct with real temptation. We're going to address some of those. The language is very, very clear and very direct. It's kind of like in the Song of Solomon. We read some of that about redeemed relationship, love between husband and wife, and it makes us uncomfortable. Well, the language in the Proverbs is going to make us uncomfortable, and we're going to read some of those verses. Because we don't just need a religion and a Christianity that's out here in the lofty high, and again, doesn't get down to the street level of what about the enticing woman, the adulterous woman? What about, and so we want to, it's real problems, real temptations, and here he says, who you run around with, they will entice you. And then quickly here he says, I want to get this here before we close and we can, he says, they're short-sighted. Down here, verses 15 through 17. We didn't really read this. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths. For their feet rush into evil, and they are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. Look at this statement, verse 18. They ambush only themselves. Boy, and I don't know, maybe some of you guys that have hunt and trapped and birds, and there's a lot of debate here about the language here, about what he's talking about exactly. Some say, well, the bird, he recognizes the snare, he stays out of it. Others say, no, birds, they don't recognize the snare. That's why they get in the snare. They see the free food. What's the little bird or the little critter do? He's coming along and he sees what? Free food. Now, he might be suspicious and he might be, but eventually what's he going to do? What's that animal going to do? More often than not, going to go get it. And what has he done to himself? He's trapped himself. In essence, what's another way we say? He has doomed himself. He has what? Killed themselves.
19, so are the ways of everyone who is greedy for gain.
Yeah.
It takes away the life of its owners.
Yeah. That is what we do when we go down those paths and we follow evil companions. It's short-sightedness. It is and so, by the way, do you ever heard this statement? Jim Rohn is a motivational speaker. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think maybe some truth into that. That's a statement that's been around for several years now. Let me ask you this. Who do you spend your time with? Think about that. Who do you spend your time with? You become the sum of those that you're closest with. and you think like and act like and are running around with. And I think that's a good lesson, not just for young people, but for all of us, is we need to stay away from corrupt people. Paul would say in 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Evil companions will corrupt good morals, right? And I think that is so important. But we do have a path to choose. I think another way of kind of summarizing Proverbs with what we're talking about is we need to think like God and we need to live like God. You got to have both. You got to have both. Which path of wisdom are we going down? There was an expert, or it was a company that brought in an expert to train their department heads and about listening to the experts and not being know-it-alls and closed off to. And so the guy was the speaker was saying, imagine you run the Titanic and you got on one of those lifeboats, and which way would you row? Well, what if you had the navigator in the boat with you, and everybody was nodding their head? Yeah, that's right. You listen to the navigator. One guy finally raised his hand and said, I don't know, he didn't do so well. He hit an iceberg. You'll get it in a minute. You got it. The point is, who are we listening to? Who are we listening to? Are we diligently seeking the right wisdom and the right source? And that's what the book is really about at its heart. What we'll do is we will I want to come back a little bit, get the tail end of chapter 1, get into 2. We probably will get through 2. We won't get into 3, so it might take the next week to finish. But then in a couple of weeks, it's just going to be a couple of weeks, then we'll launch into some themes. But the first 3 chapters really kind of set the tone and some foundational lessons. And so that's what we'll do next week. But this one was kind of the